guys. All right, chapter 11. So I'm just going to do a very small little part in the beginning here, just so you don't feel like you missed something if you want to watch this. Again, you don't, not required, don't have to, but I just wanted to make sure that I cover it. So in chapter 11, in the very beginning, the kind of growth period here, remember when we talked about evolutionary psychology that the idea that more happens before the age of 5 that can be lethal to children. And so actually it seems like in the 6 to 11 time period, there seems to be almost some sort of evolutionary protection. And it's considered one of the healthiest times of the lifespan. So you see here with the annual rates, number of deaths per 1,000. And so from 6 to 11 is our lowest. Right here, and 5 to 9 at the lowest, and then as it goes up. So seems to be a very healthy time. Growth at this time, remember we're in 6 to 11s. I'm going to do more of an introduction in class to this time period, but these kids are a lot more active, they're stronger muscularly, their motor skills are getting better. They're in school, that's their primary thing during the day. By the time they're 11, I mean, they're spending more time in school than they're doing anything else. So, and then in sports, maybe after school, they have PE, hopefully in school, recess, so they're playing. Growth is, they have grown, they just continue to grow steady. They can take care of themselves more, dress themselves, make sure they eat when they need to. They're growing in those capacities, depending less. They're at home, they're at school with peers, so the whole peer thing is getting more and more important, using their muscles more, so they're growing more. Earlier malnutrition evident in height, we see this as. So some things from early on will begin to show up, but we have such increased medical care and oral care in our first world countries, and that most everything, as long as parents are on top of it and noticing and questioning, and kids are going for their yearly visits and so forth, most things are able to be taken care of. Couple of health problems though that we do talk about in this time period. One is obesity, and we talked a little bit about this in 2 to 6 because overnutrition or overeating is a bigger deal than malnutrition. So we continue to see this. Overweight is considered in a child having a BMI above the 85th percentile. So this is their body mass index, body weight divided by height. And you can Google any kind of like BMI standards for men, women, children. They'll give them to you. Above the 85th percentile, considered to be overweight, and obese above the 95th. So, this is just something to keep in mind, and watching children eat. Children, just like adults, we have different body types, different body styles. We hold weight differently. We hold, all these different things, and so it's just about awareness and taking care of it. Heredity, why childhood obesity? Over 200 genes affect weight. I've said that before in class. Has to do with not just body type, but it's going to be things like metabolism and food preferences. So lots of different things will go into what happens and how a person holds weight. Then there's parenting. Infants that are not breastfed seem to have, there's a correlation with greater obesity, that have too much TV. Now the interesting thing about that, the too much TV, I've read studies where it's children who watch TV with commercials have more obesity than children who watch like PBS or educational or things without commercials. Because of course it's the commercials that give them all those ideas for things they want to eat. Children who drink soda is so full of empty calories. It's one of our, sort of one of those silent things that sits in the background, and it's a huge weight thing. That don't get exercise, and we look at these days, and more children living in cities, more children doing things indoors to play. This can be a factor in that. Poor family eating habits. Families that are busy, looking for things that are convenient, easy, quick, cheap, Families are, kids are busy, they're going off to do this and that, and so families aren't eating together. They find it works better in families and for children's weight and everybody when there's like family dinners, things are planned for healthy eating. Social influences, school lunches, snack machines, vending machines, subsidies for corn oil, but not fresh veggies, fresh veggies, food advertising. So a lot of things can go into, we have the whole thing with GMOs now. A lot of people looking at the way our food is produced and, what's cheaper, what kind of, we want to keep the big businesses in. Moving along. So, and all of these parenting and social influences and schools will tend to kind of point the finger at each other. And, it's kind of a, whole village sort of thing. Everybody can take a piece and a part and look at their own and be aware. And we can socially decide, that's where our school lunches have become a big thing. Some schools in some counties making sure that they offer healthy choices. But the thing is, when you get children making the choices at school of what they will eat and not eat, that becomes different. If you've got a plethora of choices, a smorgasbord, a buffet, children are going to choose children's food a lot of times. So it has to come from home first, from choices, from making sure there's a balance. And different kids are different. All kids are different. And so what they need, how they respond, it just needs to be an awareness on all parts. The other health issue at this time can be asthma. It seems to show up in kids in this time period. They can also be outgrown after this time period. It can be. So this seems to be like the period for asthma. It can show up a little bit earlier. And actually we can get adult onset asthma. It seems like I've known people with that, but at the same time, this seems to be a big part of it. So asthma, chronic inflammatory disorder of the airways, makes it difficult to breathe, includes wheezing, shortness of breath, chest tightness, coughing, can be genetic. We see air pollution. There's a lot of environmental hazards for asthma. Different things can set asthma off. My son has asthma, so I've looked into some of this, but there can be environmental allergies are a big thing that will set an asthma attack off. So if you have a lot of environmental allergies, pet allergies, can just kind of spur on those asthma episodes, as well as there's like exercise-induced asthma. People who exercise and get short of breath, then the asthma can kick in. So there's a lot of different things. Different people have different triggers, and so for people with asthma, it's good to know what the triggers are. For my son, it tends to be his allergies. So as long as we can keep the allergies under control, we can keep the asthma more under control. But then there's also this hygiene hypothesis that a lot of people look at these days, and it basically says that we're too clean. That in our world today, we're very sanitized. We live in homes, we use a lot of Purell. We live in homes that are clean, and we use lots of disinfecting stuff and antibacterial soap, and we want to make sure we never have any germs, and we're sort of a germ-phobic society, and we build up our immune system, which is something that can be correlated with allergies and asthma by being exposed to these things. So when we don't get exposed to them, we don't build up the ability to fight them off. So we find that we might be overprotected. They do find children, babies that have pets when they're born have fewer allergies to the pets than those that don't. So, there's some things to look at for this. Are we sort of overprotecting our children and ourselves and our society these days? So that's one thing with asthma. So obesity and asthma seem to be the big health ones we look at in children. Otherwise, it's a pretty healthy time. Of course, there are things that can onset. So a couple of things under brain development. Corpus callosum is still developing. Balance, two-handed coordination, motor skills, all of this as the two sides of the brain interact. Myelination continues, and it increases what we call reaction time. So be careful, because the quiz, I can't remember if it has this question in it. But reaction time is how fast we respond to something. So if a ball is coming at us, what is our reaction time to being able to put up our hands and protect ourselves? Also in thought, how quickly can we come up with an answer? Can we think about something? So as we age, in this time period for children, our reaction time gets quicker. And then as we age and age more, reaction time gets slower. but for these children, reaction time gets much quicker. And that's, by the time we get to like 18, that's kind of a great period for that because we're strong and fast. Prefrontal cortex begins to plan, monitor, and evaluate, so it continues to grow. And kids are at school, so that's getting worked more and more. They're having to use their explicit memory. We've talked about that, implicit and explicit. So in this time period, explicit is really coming online. We're at school, we have to remember facts and figures and dates and learning to classify things and science, and we're learning math, multiplication tables. So we're really exercising that memory. And we're having to exercise self-control as we're dealing with a lot of children on the playground, at recess, in class. We're having to listen to teachers. Children at this age have a lot of different places that they're sort of figuring out how to do things. So all of this is working as the brain continues to develop. In the area, a lot of it, that prefrontal cortex, a lot of the self-executive function is a big thing for this time, and that's very much the PFC, that prefrontal cortex. Planning, memory, organization skills, being able to regulate ourselves. These executive functions come into play. So 3 things that really begin: reaction time, the time it takes to respond to a stimulus. So it gets better. Their reaction time gets quicker. Selective attention. So by age 7, the ability to process many things at once, but focus on what is most important. So you've got to be able to tune out everything else around you. Now this is tricky for kids because they're so social. They're trying to navigate the social world while also trying to begin to navigate the academic world. So they don't want to be left out. They don't want to do this, but then the school is important. And so this selective attention, but the capacity for it, as the prefrontal cortex grows and is able to inhibit the limbic system, they have a greater neural capacity for it. And then they're having to practice that effortful, that word I hate, effortful control to really work it. And they work that muscles. So they're practicing the selective attention, being able to tune in to the teacher, to the work they're doing, and tune out any distractions around them. To be able to do homework, all of that. Automatization, we talked about this. This is where we move from becoming consciously incompetent to unconsciously competent in things. Skills that took great effort and concentration. Reading, writing one's name, which is like kind of certain, becomes unconsciously competent. Those, tying shoes, these things become more routine. They become unconscious competence. Skills due to myelination and practice. The more they practice, the more these networks become myelinated, the quicker they become, the more automatic. The brain works less, exerts more energy to do something that it's got automatization for. So then it's the firing and wiring doesn't happen like as much because the brain just has those networks in place and it just does it. So this is habit building. So that's really it. That's all I'm going to go over on a screencast for this chapter. So I think I introduced you to my dog Zachi, Z-O-T-C-H-I, in another video. If you can email me his name spelled correctly, Z, that's like in zoo, O-T-C-H-I, Zot, like dot, but with a Z, C-H-I, then you'll get an extra point of extra credit. So there you go. I'll see you guys.